Welcome everyone to the Star Series season number 3, brought to you by StarLadder and iLeague. I am DT. With me is Richard Campbell for tonight. How's it going, Rich?
Oh man, it's going really well. I'm excited to be casting with you again. I don't think we've gotten to cast with each other since China for WESG, so excited to get to jump in the ring with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. That was back all the way back in January of this year. Seems like it was just yesterday. But yeah, Firebat, he is gone for today. He's been casting pretty much nonstop. Rich is happily taking his place. Thanks for jumping in here, Rich. And we're going to have a pretty nice set of matches for us today. Pretty much the same players as yesterday. And we'll see how they fare against the other players in the group. As talking about Group A here. So first on the schedule, it's going to be DrHippi versus Neirea, and then all the players that we saw yesterday. Absent are going to be Orange and Sixo because they are in China, so keep that in mind. But this is do or die time here for DrHippi, as he's already started out 0-2, and you need to get top 2 in the entire group in order to move on to the World Finals, unless you're trying to make it through that last chance tournament. So very important here for DrHippi. For Neirea, he can cement his first place status.
Yeah, I mean, that's this is a great match to start the day because you have DrHippi, who's definitely on the back foot here. Neirea is in the driver's seat. He's undefeated right now. He has the most points in the group. He's got 6 points, and he is 2-0. So, like you said, he could really cement that first place win. And then after that, we have plenty of good matches. I also love the fact that we have 2 team kill matches today. Those are always a lot of fun. So we're going to follow up with Bunny Hopper and Nyman. After that, Frozen, Neirea, Nyman, DrHippi, and then close out the day with Frozen and Bunny Hopper. And I'm excited to see Frozen as well. We didn't get to see too much of him yesterday. I believe just one series. And you actually have him as your prediction for potentially being #1 in the group.
Yeah, not looking too great right now after that 0-3 yesterday. He didn't do too well with the Priest, but he can certainly come back. The nature of this tournament, however, is that he needs to come back right quick, because otherwise you're going to be falling pretty far down. You can still get to the global finals, if you get to 3rd and 4th place, but then you need to be top 1 out of 4 people, which is basically where you started in the first place, right? You need to be, at some point, you need to be top 1/4, or you're not going there.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, we already do have some players who are starting to fall behind with just how aggressive this is. And as you can see by all those faces that are on your screen right now at home, these players are not to be taken lightly. Just an absolutely incredible group of players in Group A. I'm going to agree with Firebat, though. I have Neirea leaving the group as #1, and then #2 is still up in the air for me, pulling for Bunny Hopper, but that's looking We'll see what happens. He's tied right now with Ties, who we also won't see today, but is in the group. They're both tied at 1-1 with 3 points.
I'm forgetting when Firebat actually made that prediction, because if he made that before we started, that's pretty impressive of him.
He made it early. I believe it may have been before Neirea played at all. I forget exactly what his logic was, but he had a pretty solid reasoning for it. Mine's like much more gut feeling than it is just based off of stats. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before the broadcast even started. Like, Neirea's just been top 8ing consistently time and time again. Like, if you pull up like what he has done recently, it's just like top 8, top 8, top 8, top 8. And I kind of feel like he's at least going to perform that well, and this might be the tournament for him to just take that first. It's been a long time since we've seen a result like that from him.
I love how production just cuts back to us right when I'm trying to take a sip of Coke. But
dude,
anyway.
You got to keep yourself hydrated before we're about to get started with this first series today, and it's going to be a good one. We do not want you conking out in the middle.
I think they were trying to send us a message like, please send them to the YouTube channel down below that we're showing on screen, youtube.com/HSStarLadder, and they are on top of those uploads. I know some tournament organizers, not gonna name any names, they take their sweet time with putting these things up, but they're already up, guys. You can go ahead and check out yesterday's VODs. They're in a nice little playlist for you guys, so go there to youtube.com/HSStarLadder, and you can go ahead and watch yesterday's games. And Rich, I do like having those games on YouTube because I like to watch in 2x speed just to get through my day, because sometimes these matches can go pretty long.
Oh man, I watch it in half speed just so I can listen to your voice and Firebat's voice longer. That's how I do it.
But then
you don't want to miss anything with this incredibly high paced Hearthstone action.
That makes it sound drunk when you put a point. when you put a point 0.5 speed, it just makes us sound drunk, though. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, let's take care of business right now because we're about to jump into this first match. We're seeing pretty standard lineups, but DrHippi opts to not, or sorry, Neirea opts to not ban that rogue. So we're actually going to see DrHippi playing that rogue out. It's pretty popular to see those rogue bans throughout this entire series and just the meta in general. But DrHippi, as we said, on the back foot, Neirea in the driver's seat. Do you think that that is going to be the trend by the end of the series, or do you think DrHippi can regain here?
Well, unfortunately for DrHippi, I think I'm going to go ahead. Well, maybe fortunately for him, because I might be caster cursing Neirea here, but I think he's going to go ahead and continue to win, especially because DrHippi's problem deck has been that Paladin for him, just unable to get wins.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot earlier, and just like kind of the idea that everyone has those really the three core decks that they know are strong. The rogue's usually getting banned, and then it comes down to that pivotal choice for your fourth deck. And a lot of time we've just been calling it the problem deck because it's just a deck that can't get it done. I know we saw it with Bunny Hopper with the Shaman. He did find one win with that Shaman, I do believe, but the Shaman overall, like, as more and more information was poured out from the deck, the easier and easier it was for other players to counter it. Pretty strong start here from Neirea, going to turn one that babbling book out, but DrHippi has a pretty compelling hand himself, just figuring out which one drop he wants to use here and getting out that Swashbuckler.
A couple of Swashbucklers, just one just left side or right side at this point.
Big choices.
Yeah, he can't just push his damage to face unless he's worried about the exact, pickup of Arcane Explosion off of that Babbling Book, and does go ahead and fit that small bit of damage in.
So in this matchup, how much does DrHippi really want to just press that face damage and be the aggressor here? Looks like he was trying to opt down that line. 2-3 Arcanologist going to slow down that process just a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup because Rogue is technically the beatdown if you want to look at, as beatdown versus control matchups, like who's trying to kill whom. But they're only trying to beat them down, not because the Mage can outlast them, but they can eventually just beat them down in all one fell swoop through, ice blocks and stuff like that. So it's kind of a weird situation where they're beating them down only because they're afraid of getting beaten down pretty soon afterward.
Yeah, this deck has been really interesting. This is, of course, being that Guthar Mage style here, and it's been pretty powerful. I think that one of the reasons Neirea has looked so strong is because he has that as his fourth deck in the lineup, and I think it's not really a problem deck as to where we're calling a lot of them problem decks. And as you can see, already taking a strong position on the board here is Neirea. DrHippi has some pretty difficult choices to make. I mean, how soon can he really make that investment, pull the cord, and just invest all the way in that questing adventure?
Well, if he's going to go all in, he needs to make sure that it's above 6 health, or else it's going to get fireballed down, right? So we can go ahead and look at his hand right now. He can go questing coin that turns into a 4/4. Then he can prep, or sorry, not prep. He can prep the mirror image, which would bring it up to a 6/6, and then he can backstab one of his own minions if he so chooses. So that's certainly a possibility for him. Otherwise,
I like checking for that Spellbender, though. That's actually a really good card to see here. He can prep that bad boy out, and that's going to add a little bit of protection for that questing.
Yeah, that's one of the best possible secrets, or even just cards, that you could have gotten off of that Swashbuckler. That's insane.
That's going to give him a fighting chance here, developing that 6/6. It's probably going to swing in at least twice here. We'll say, though, in Neirea's favor, he does have those 2 ice blocks, so he can stall a little bit and find his own win conditions here. But now DrHippi definitely has the board, but not too many resources to work with in these future turns.
And Neirea's thinking, if that's Counterspell or Spellbender, and I lose my Frostbolt and I cannot shatter afterward, then I'm in a lot of trouble. So I need to think about this very carefully here. And I think he's just going to go for the Frostbolt and see that it's going to get Spellbender here. I suppose he was thinking that, I can't risk it. Or no, I have to risk it, I should say. And if he doesn't go for that, the play right now, then he's taking way too much damage. But ends up not being on the right side of that exchange, and He would
Yeah,
take a
I
ton of
mean,
damage.
even though that didn't work out, we definitely can't think too Roddy here. Neirea definitely making the right play. That is the only card that could really mess it up that terribly there. I mean, there are definitely a few things that could go wrong, and checking into it is great. But I think he was on the winning percentage with that play. Backstab going to be the follow up answer from DrHippi here, just trying to keep this board the best that he can, trading out that weapon and the 1/1 9/9 going to be pitching in damage time and time again.
Little Jane is getting in there with the cold blood now that Mirror Mage is turned into a 4/2. And yeah, this is one of the ways that Rogue can win. Just have this an unstoppable minion on the field that you cannot deal with.
And this
And
is one of the reasons that Rogue has just gotten banned out so many times, D2. What do you think Nyrea's logic was behind not banning the Rogue?
well, I'm kind of liking his decision to ban the Druid because it's been able to. Druid typically just ends up getting wins regardless. And if you think about it, Neirea really wants to get a win with this Mage, which is his, quote unquote problem deck. It's his fourth deck. And, I was about to mention as we were getting to this game that he really got the top end of this particular, pick, going with the Mage into this matchup, right? Against the Rogue. And whether the Rogue is Quest Rogue or it's Miracle Rogue, he did know it's Miracle Rogue because he saw it yesterday. But this is going to be favorable for him regardless. It's just things have turned out this particular way.
Yeah, and a lot of that is going to come off the back of that second swashbuckler that DrHippi played, finding that ever important Mage secret here. But Neirea not entirely out of it yet. I mean, usually at this point, with most decks, you would probably say that DrHippi is just so far ahead. But I think Neirea definitely still does have a few options here. I mean, what are those primary outs that he can be drawing? Oh, Eater of Secrets. I was talking too much, did not see that one go down. That was an absolutely filthy pickup.
The issue, however, is that Neirea still has Ice Block. So that's an issue for DrHippi. But as far as Neirea is concerned, that is still painful for him. Not sure that. The thing is, DrHippi was considering just waiting to pop his opponent at exactly the right moment, or not pop, just kill his opponent at the right moment. But felt like the minion pressure was too important, and there was a possibility that if his questing adventure gets taken care of, that he doesn't get the damage in. Wanted to do the Eater Secrets first, just so that he can get through potentially an ice barrier and start pressing for lethal damage there. But Neirea now has one less turn to work with, which is probably going to spell the end for him. I'm not sure really how he's going to get out of this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at his hand right now, just trying to figure out what outs he can actually draw here. Looks like DrHippi may be able to take this one out swiftly, which is very good for him. I mean, we mentioned it, if you're just tuning in, DrHippi is the player who's on the back foot here. He has not won a single series. He's 0-2 in this tournament. Neirea, on the other hand, has the absolute reverse score, being 2-0. He's looking to keep that, and definitely don't want to be pulling that 8 drop off the rip there. Not going to be enough to slow him down. I mean,
card
okay.
He could have gotten off the top. I mean, Cabal Courier there was. I don't think there's anything he could have gotten, but a Frostbolt off the top instead of the Medivh could have kept him alive. He could have gone Frostbolt into Shatter into Ice Barrier, and then immediately start. He have to dodge. Eviscerate for a couple turns at that point, or any source of damage, and then he has to get Alexstrasza after clearing his opponent's board. So it still wasn't over, which is crazy to think about, considering what had happened in that game. But DrHippi does take game number 1, and that's kind of a big deal because that's the deck that Neirea was trying to prey on with his Mage, and he kind of got the better end of that first pick here, and see if he can pick up a win later on.
I was totally going to agree with you. I mean, you mentioned it a few times. Just you really thought Neirea had the upper hand in that matchup just based off the way that the decks matched up. But DrHippi going to get that pivotal first win. And on top of that, you mentioned the answers that he was actually looking for. Neirea was actually looking for to win the match. And it's so funny because he had them. He had the Frostbolt. He had the Shatter. And just that Swashbuckler being super disruptive here. Now DrHippi going to be running his Priest. So this is kind of that fourth deck choice that we talked about quite a bit. Neirea going to be on the Druid. What do you think about this one, D2?
Well, Druid versus Priest is kind of funny because before this particular expansion, people were like, "Oh, it's priest favored." You know, people specifically pick priest into druid to take it out, but then people started learning how to play the druid side of things better, and realizing that you can take you can take the early hits, but you need to just develop your jades as quickly as possible. And a lot of people have been saying that druid is just straight up favored now, and just because priest was favored last expansion doesn't mean that it continues to be so in this expansion.
Exactly.
And so I'm inclined to agree with that, and I think that druid just doesn't. They don't experience enough pressure early on, and that's a recipe for disaster if you're the other side.
But you did say one of the main things you want to be doing with that druid is developing these jades. No cards in Neirea's hand to ramp or develop jades here, and three extremely reactive cards to start off this game.
Yeah, that said, though, if you look at DrHippi's hand, it's not that great either. He's not putting enough pressure on, I don't believe. So I think Neirea is still pretty okay in this spot.
Yeah, he does have time.
Right? There's no black graying technician. There's no, what is that card called? The
Black Corruptor.
Yeah, no, that as well, and the Twilight Guardian. So just curving out as priest is so much harder these days, and as Neirea, you don't really worry about a whole lot. Not to mention the Wormus agent either, right? So if you're priest, you're not really putting that pressure on, or at least not as much as you would like. Looks like Neirea's going to just cycle off his own minion here.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid play here. Like you said, he wants to be developing those jades as quick as possible. That's going to get him that much deeper in his deck. That's an option to do it as well. And hopefully his draws will smooth out a little bit for him here. DrHippi going to play his first card of the game here on turn 3. It's the Cabal Talon Priest. Opted not even use that Battle Cry just to get that minion pressure out here. He does need to develop something. The second Jade Idol going to be the draw here. Probably going to want to hold on to that second one to get it back in the deck as soon as he can. But first Jade Idol on the battlefield here for Neirea.
There are a few mid-rangey type matchups, or obviously aggro matchups, where you would just play out the second Jade Idol. I don't believe this is one of them. The Priest is kind of like a hybrid mid-range and control deck. You really need those Jade Idols. Like, getting only up to a 10/10, which sounds like a lot, is not going to be enough here. You need that inevitability, and he's going to hold on to it, which is unfortunate because now that Jade Idol is a dead draw for about 6 more turns.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Definitely do agree with you there. I mean, and I'm assuming you're basically saying the line to go right now when you say waiting until turn 6. It's like turn 6 coin or drop the auctioneer coin idol into your deck.
I'm saying 6 more turns from now, so we're waiting until turn 10 to.
You're waiting all the way till the end. Yeah, I mean that is definitely the thing here. Definitely gonna have to hold on to it. We'll have to see. Maybe he can get some nuts going with the auctioneer. Another Jade Behemoth, a little bit too early, but this swipe is going to allow him to affect the board in some way, getting rid of that 3/3. And still Neirea getting a poke through for a little bit of damage here, but DrHippi does still have time on his side as Neirea tries to beef up his army of Jades here, getting off that Elise, getting the pack shuffled into his deck.
Yeah, so DrHippi has a few things up his sleeve right now, right, to combat this here on the side of Neirea. There's been no mana cheating on the side of Neirea, so when he coins out this Jade Behemoth, it just gets eaten up by a Bookworm, which is very annoying if you're Neirea. The second one also gets eaten up by a Bookworm, and there's a Primordial Drake. So typically in this spot, Neirea would be a pretty big advantage, right? Because you're not really too worried about, the minions on the side of your opponent if you're just putting out your own mid-range minions, a lot of, back and forth and trading and stuff. But just the way this has worked out, if he had Aya, this would be a big difference. Having Aya here would be it would just completely change the tone of this matchup. But as it stands, unless these draws change over the next few turns, I think that DrHippi is just going to basically run over him because of the double Bookworm here.
Yeah, I mean, my question for you, how much merit is there to potentially holding on to that coin for the auctioneer? I mean, he's very aware the Bookworm is something that he could be playing into. And
yeah, that's why he didn't snap it, right? That's why he just didn't snap Jade Behemoth. So, all right, so we've seen this time and time again from Neirea where you think that there's an obvious play here because typically 99% of the players would make that play, but then Neirea comes with a better one, and oh my goodness, you see the wins here from Neirea as the Draconid Operative comes off the top. If it weren't for that card, you're looking at a Tempo Bookworm or nothing really, just Shadow Visions into a whole lot of nothing here from DrHippi.
Yeah, you do not want to see that bad boy being dropped down. Just going to be able to accumulate more value. Stampede and Kodo seems to be a pretty good pick here, but Wrath also very strong. Going to allow DrHippi to get that much deeper into the deck. Neirea seems like his only option here is to play that Jade Behemoth on curve here, and that's going to go right into the clutches of that Bookworm.
Yeah, a lot of times you look at these matchups and you're thinking like, you know, this looks so great for the priest, right? I mean, obviously Neirea missed some ramp and missed some other things, but you're looking at it like, how does Druid even win this matchup? Like, it's just such a blowout. Like, even if it went better, like, how could he possibly win the game? But if you think about it, everything just went basically perfectly right here for DrHippi. All the answers matched up. That Draconid Operative was basically game winning, but looks like Neirea is just gonna put up this 4/8 Primordial Drake. Not gonna worry about the second Jade Behemoth. He just needs to get this on the board right now and get a blocker in the way, and perhaps he can hold on utilizing this.
Yeah, I mean, the big question here is now, like, can he stabilize on board based off of this card? But you see that DrHippi has plenty more gas to work with here, plenty time to... DrHippi right now wants to go pretty fast, right, G2?
Yeah, he wants to kill Neirea. The longer this game goes, the more it favors Neirea. And Neirea still has held onto that Jade Idol in his hand. He's still holding on hope that he can go infinite at some point. The problem is if he had played that Jade Idol out, now DrHippi has multiple win conditions, right? He can outlast them or he can just kill them. But right now, DrHippi has to kill. And this Primordial Drake is the most annoying minion in the game for Priest. It's a dragon, so you cannot Dragon Fire Potion it. It has 4 attacks, so you can't Shadow Word anything it. And it's a taunt, so you can't just ignore it like you would maybe with a Twilight Drake. So DrHippi is wondering what the best way to go about this is.
Yeah, and we are starting to see DrHippi having more and more of those reactive cards in his hand. So that is going to slow down the minion pressure just a little bit here. Wrath going to be enough to help finish off that good old Primordial Dragon. He's going to run. Oh, yeah, and he gets to keep the minion as well. Wasn't even thinking about him having enough mana to actually use that hero power. So he does still have plenty of minion pressure, and that Nourish is just going to be so slow.
Yeah, one of the weaknesses with Priest is that you don't really have room to run things like Smite or damage removal. So Neirea was thinking, okay, I put this in the field. He can't do anything. He has to throw in his minions in order to deal with it. And now it looks like he's finally going to have to commit the Jade Idol here just to get something onto the board. But he was thinking, okay, you can't heal both of those minions. You don't run Holy Nova. So one of these is going to die between the Bookworm and the Draconid Operative. But DrHippi had selected that Wrath earlier. And so it's very, very painful for Neirea. Looking at the damage we have right here with the Bookworm coming out, there is 11 damage to face, so 2 damage off the lethal that I'm seeing here. I don't think that Netherspire Historian can really push through any sort of lethal. The Potion of Madness can't pick up anything, but it could be just time to go for that. Just Bookworm and probably heal up your Draconid Operative just to make it, hard to deal with unless you're throwing in your 4/4 and just push everything in the face. It looks like here.
Yeah, I think I definitely do agree with you there. I mean, the kill's definitely in your sights, but it is to be stated, though, DrHippi does have the potential to outlast this Druid as well. Now Neirea opting to play his last Jade Idol.
What do you think about the trade onto the 3/3? I don't think that was necessary. It's tempting, right? It's always tempting. Like, 3/6 kills a 3/3. It's like it's just easy food, right? You just kill it off. But that 3/3 wasn't going to get a better trade anywhere else on the board.
Yeah, I think that maybe it just comes down to the fact, though, that DrHippi wants to make sure he crosses all his T's and dots his I's. He knows that Neirea can't outlast him now.
I like to cross my T's by bringing my opponent down to 2.
Yeah, I mean, that usually is a pretty good way to do it. That is a pretty solid way to do it. We're going to see that Nourish with the Fandral. Absolutely massive play, but it doesn't look like Neirea is going to have enough time to capitalize off that value. He's seeing it himself as well. Going to concede. DrHippi now leading 2-0 in this series, where before he's just not had this good of a series in this tournament. Now he's looking to get his first win on the board. That would be 3 points to him, so he would actually jump up and be relatively competitive in the field. Yeah. I mean, how many? I don't think he can lose again, right? If he wants to get top 2.
It would be very, very difficult if he had 3 losses to get top 2. It would have to be some sort of 3-way tie, I would imagine.
Yeah, Neirea would have to have just like the worst day of his life too. Even if Neirea loses this series, he's still going to be in that first place position. That is to be seen though at the end of Group A. But we are on match point here right now. DrHippi trying to take it with the Paladin, and you've already mentioned it. This has been his problem lineup, and he is playing into the Druid, which Neirea just played out. And this time, Neirea has a hand to be reckoned with.
Yeah, unless the like this is kind of sad for Neirea, right? He wishes he had his hand last game because against the Paladin it actually doesn't even matter. It's sad to say.
True.
Against the Paladin, unless the Paladin curves up perfectly, for basically infested Tauren into Elise, into Spikeridge Deed, and then into Tyrion, and then Druid has nothing going on for it, the Druid just eventually wins because there's not enough pressure, and there's no multiple Tyrions in the deck for DrHippi because he doesn't run the Stonehill Defender. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, do you think there's a chance for DrHippi to get reverse swept here? We talked about N'Zoth Paladin just not performing well at all in this tournament and tournaments that have been going on recently. I know you and Firebat talked about it quite a bit yesterday, just throwing out numbers from CN versus EU and how N'Zoth Paladin actually did. I know there are also two iterations of the deck, one having a little bit more pressure and one being probably the greediest thing that's ever been concocted in Hearthstone history.
yeah, this is a very anti-aggro list here from DrHippi. So, yeah, off the top. But for Neirea's sake, this is his by far best matchup. It looks like he's already on his way to just kind of steamrolling this one. I believe he has Paladin. He has more like Paladin, if I'm remembering correctly.
I can double check for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also a favorite matchup for the Paladin, but not as much. It takes a lot of deft maneuvering. So it kind of requires the player to be pretty skilled in order to make that matchup into a favorable one, which is kind of a different story for this particular matchup. And then we get into the Mage, which is going to be the hardest matchup for Neirea to win. He's going to have to, that's basically unfavored for his side. So he's going to have to make sure that he, maneuvers his way out of that one as well. So basically it comes down to this probably goes to a fifth game, but then DrHippi will be favored in that fifth game.
Yeah, and the reason for that, of course, Neirea wants to have the best record possible, especially if he is going to drop an L here, because that's just going to help him qualify for that first place position. And like we said, looking really strong, being the leader of this group.
I do have to throw out a disclaimer though, because I say that the N'Zoth Paladin is favored against that, but it is N'Zoth Paladin, so anything is possible as far as its futility is concerned.
Yeah, I think that's been a discussion that kind of everyone's been having right now. I mean, what is the main reason that people continue to bring the N'Zoth Paladin? Is it just as an anti-aggro tool, or is it because of its ability to be incredibly greedy when the meta has slowed down?
There are just theoretical matchups that it's good against. It feels like the old Control Priest, where there's theoretically it's good against X, Y, and Z, but in practice it just ends up not panning out that way. And another factor is that Shoop just won DreamHack with it, but I think that might be a problem as people are looking at that result, because he won that in a format that was Last Hero Standing, which is a completely different situation.
Yeah, it's so different. And now we do see Neirea is pretty clearly on his path. I mean, DrHippi dropping incredibly strong threats here, like Karen. Oh, that is very interesting to see here. I was about to say it's just like really great to see the Karen, but we already do see Neirea at the point that he's getting these bigger and bigger idols that can actually deal with it pretty easily. But I think DT got a pretty good idea of which card DrHippi's probably going to take here.
Yeah, this is the one way that DrHippi can steal this match, is if he goes Dino Size into Rag or vice versa, and there's just too many large minions for Neirea to deal with. But gonna go ahead and cycle this Wrath, Phantom on the Wrath. Very nice combination here. Picks up a Primordial Drake. Neirea's gonna need some card draw pretty quickly here, or else he might run into some trouble.
Yeah, he's running a little bit low on the reserves here, chipping through as much face damage as he can, hoping that his lead in board presence is going to be enough to carry him to a victory. But his next Jade is a 6/6, so definitely impressive. But like you said, DrHippi does have the option to just start dropping big minion after big minion and just demanding answers out of Neirea.
It feels kind of bad to Dino Size here because you're kind of just playing an 8 mana Blessing of Kings onto the Cairn, but if you don't do so, you're falling into a bit of trouble. So he's going to go ahead and choose silver, or yeah, choose silver and Consecration here and take out some of these minions. Going to favor killing the Fandral over the 5/3. So yeah, this is a bit better, and Dino Size will be a bit better in the future as well.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the strongest play DrHippi could make there. He definitely slows down the bleeding on the board. He still has the option to play those threats a little bit later on and absolutely demand answers Primordial Dragon off the rip.
I wonder if Neirea goes face here. It's so tempting to obviously trade the 5/1 to the 4/5, but he has double swipe plus Earthen Scales in hand.
That's actually like a really that's a compelling play here. I mean, what advantage does he have to actually trade it out?
Well, trading out, you just get a very nice. If your opponent has Consecration, you feel really bad having not traded. But this is the other, punish, right? If you did go face, then your opponent just gets to heal up anyway, and gets kind of not the greatest trade, but an okay trade onto, or he gets to smack into your Primordial Drake without dying. So that's another thing as well. So double swipe.
Both of those swipes, that hurts, especially when you're low on resources here.
Yeah, and Neirea, he drew his Kodo just now. He already drew Hunger Crab earlier, I believe, if I remember correctly. So even if he picks up something like the Curator, he's not going to draw those, which, he's just running low on card draw.
Yeah, he started that game off, you are correct, with that Crab. So Curator, not necessarily the card that's going to get him the gas that he needs to close this one out. We are going to see that N'Zoth now being drawn for DrHippi. I mean, obviously he hasn't played the Tyrion yet, but can he just play that N'Zoth?
Oh, he's just going to play a 10/10. Okay.
That's still a thing, and Neirea still doesn't have an answer to it. So, pretty strong play here. I mean, do you just hold the N'Zoth until Tyrion every time?
Well, I think he just figured, my opponent just used double swipe onto my Rag, so how does he deal with this? There's no mulch in the game anymore, and standard for Druid. So, seems like the best way for DrHippi to go about it, especially because the 5/7 and the Cairn coming out of the Zoth won't be able to take care of it anyway. So, yeah, this might be a way for DrHippi to steal this one out. This is one of the few times you might be able to see the Paladin deal with the Druid, as the Druid has just run out of stuff to do, and the Paladin has found a way to get large enough minions that Neirea can't deal with it.
We really can't stress it enough just how crucial this win is for DrHippi. Neirea obviously would be huge as well. Neirea would just put himself in such a strong position to just be #1 in the entire tournament right now in Group A. But DrHippi not getting to pick up a series yet here, looking to get his first one at the end of this game.
Yeah, and for DrHippi, it would keep him alive for first and second, but also really increase his chances for third and fourth, which would be the last chance spots, right? In order for him to get into those finals in Kyiv. Because, at 0-3, now you're in trouble of not getting top 3 and 4, because third and fourth place, you're looking at 3 losses and 4 losses respectively on average. I'm going to go ahead and go with Adapt here. Probably wants to see Taunt or something like that. Just to be annoying. Although he does have this Wicker Flame in the way, so he's not really in danger of dying. Finally, a Jade Spirit picked up for Neirea. That would have been welcome a little while ago. Still not the card draw that he needed, but it's better than what he's been getting lately.
Yeah, now we're going to see him using the hero power to get rid of that Divine Shield, trade out that minion, but DrHippi really seems to be in the driver's seat here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dirty Rat could come out here. I would imagine we see just a Consecration, use your faith in the 6/6. Wicker Flame has helped you heal up quite a bit here. So by the time you swing in, you're going to be at the same health that you were at the start of last turn. And he's going to commit the Dirty Rat, though.
It's pretty clear that Neirea doesn't have too many surprises left in his deck as well. No crazy burn, no swipes even left in the deck. Leash Trail Blazer going to round out that turn. How can Neirea come back? What outs is he looking for at this point in the matchup?
Neirea is looking for Nourish into some Jade stuff, and then that maybe forces your opponent to trade in his Dino-sized dude, and then from there you can Wrath it down. That's also a very good draw.
Yeah, Primordial Drake definitely going to slow down the minion pressure that DrHippi has been applying while even getting rid of a couple of them here, and it's going to give a little bit of protection to now the 6/2 Jade Idol that he has on the board. Takes out one minion, looking to take out a second one starting next turn. And he can take out that Elise, but luckily for DrHippi, he does have the Consecration to potentially remove it here. It might be a safe play to do it. Do you think that we see the Earthen Scales just to protect? Neirea opting not to do that there. Do you think there's any value in using the Earthen Scales to try to protect the 6/2 from being consecrated on the next turn, or is that too much of an investment?
Yeah, if he doesn't have the consecration, then you're really kind of just wasting it.
Yeah.
Well, the pack comes out here, so that's a lot more value here for DrHippi. Immediately plays that one out. Gets some okay options. He can summon a copy of his 10/7 here, which seems pretty good at the moment. Gonna go ahead.
Seems okay.
Yeah.
And the Spirit Echoes, you talk about value, man. That pack definitely going to be cashing in quite a lot of value for DrHippi, which could be the nail in the coffin here. Jade Idol coming up real late here. Yeah. Has no choice but to rip down that 7/7 windmill slam style, and now has to use the Earthen Scales. Absolutely no choice here. Needs that armor to just try to fight another day, but it's not enough.
Literally just sit on board, even getting up to 25 because his opponent had 25 damage on the board there. So one of the few times you're going to be able to see Paladin take out the Druid. I was saying that was a pretty favored matchup for the Druid. And the reason why is because that typically doesn't happen. Don't see any dino-sized minions.
Well, it goes to show how well DrHippi actually is able to play. I mean, we obviously know, taking second place last year at BlizzCon, this guy does have what it takes, but he took 2 unfavorable matchups there. He started off the series with an unfavorable matchup.
I would say 3.
Yeah, you definitely make that argument. So DrHippi now putting his first win of the entire tournament on the board. So now he is going to have that 1-2 record, his first 3 points. But we have a few players getting ready right now. It's going to be Bunny Hopper versus Nyman. So they are just getting ready right now. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to see who takes that series.